Welcome back to another fantastic episode of UAP Studies Podcast. My name is Jason Guillemette, joined by, of course, Dr. Michael Glawson of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. How's it going today, Michael?
I'm doing fantastic, Jason. How are you? I'm really excited about this interview.
Me too. We got Luigi Vendittelli today. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yeah,
Luigi?
you did it.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect. I have a knack for butchering last names, but I've been looking forward to this project. It just came to my attention not too long ago. And I was just mentioning to Luigi, I think he had one post on Instagram, and I got out of my chair like, what the hell? What the hell? And I pushed in the video. And it was also that I told you so by, the Bob Lazar meme.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Just this whole momentum of Project Gravitaur, and we're going to get into it here. But I send you all the info. Michael, you and I have been back and forth on Bob Lazar. I'm a huge supporter and defender of Lazar on a lot of podcasts and other shows. And you're still new to the sort of UFO background, and there's so much to it, right?
Years in. So I'm only about 4 years in, and Bob Lazar is one of these things that sort of sticks in my mind, and I have lots of questions. And
you're currently reading Dreamland by Bob Lazar.
I'm about halfway through Dreamland.
Gotcha.
And I have lots of notes. I actually bought the copy of Dreamland that I have because I was thumbing through it in a bookstore and instinctively took out a pen and started writing questions in the margin, and then I was like, oh, I have to buy this copy.
Yeah. Oh, you're kind of stuck now.
Yeah. But yeah, I have lots of questions, and but I want to be clear that I'm not here in this interview as a sort of antagonist. I'm open-minded and questioning, and I know that that's
Awesome.
going to make the most productive conversation that we can possibly have. But I will raise some of those questions, and I think that Luigi's game for it.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what UAP is all about, right? Is studying this in depth. And this project, Luigi, we're going to give you the helm here, and you're going to talk to us through this project. But it's called Project Gravitaur, and it's probably the most in-depth look into not only Bob Lazar's work at S4, but
right.
you're putting the people along with him in a sense, and it'll make sense later on when you explain the project. But this project comes in 3 stages, which I thought was really cool. So we'll get onto that too. You got some slides. So if you are listening to this podcast, if you're on Spotify and YouTube, you'll see the slides, and I would encourage you to go see the slides. Excuse me. Because he's got some great material here to show us. He's been working on this project for a while. So we're going to give the helm to our boy, Luigi. Welcome to UAP Studies. This is your first time. It's awesome to have you here, bro.
Yeah. Thanks guys for having me. And it's a pleasure. So yeah, like I said to Michael, I said, absolutely open to having these conversations. One of the main goals of Project Gravitaur was to really tighten things up, the information that's out there on Bob Lazar's experience at S4. So Project Gravitaur really focuses on what happened to him between December of 1988 all the way to about the month of May 1989. So there basically is what the main story is. If anybody hears about Bob Lazar, it's always about what happened to him in this secret base. So the incredible amount of information out there, and that was incorrect. We decided to get really dedicated ourselves to making it as accurate as possible. Although there's like the book, like Dreamland, and there's a lot of information out there, the disinformation out there was like monolithic. We could see that there was just so much bad info, and it all started off with me wanting to contact Bob. It all started because we wanted to make a replica of the sport model. We wanted to make a professional replica of the flying saucer.
Okay.
I'm a merchandiser by trade. Been making merchandise and licensing stuff for people for 25 years. And I said, I've never seen anything professionally done with a flying saucer that would be commercially sold. So there's people that have done beautiful flying saucer designs, but they're more artistic, they're more handmade stuff. We wanted to do a commercial product. So I said, which of the flying saucers out there, or who has the most information on accurate information on a flying saucer, not only the outside of it, but the inside of it. And two names came up, was Bob Lazar and Travis Walton, because Travis had been apparently inside one of them. But Bob Lazar was the one who actually dismantled one. So it clearly,
spent more time in the craft and
right.
Yeah. Claims to have spent more time.
Yeah. Right. That's right. And so I reached out to United Nuclear, which is Bob's company, spoke to Zach, which is his right-hand man, introduced myself. This is going back 2 years ago, guys. And I said, I'm a merchandiser. I'm in Montreal. I make products for a whole bunch of license. I work with licenses. I also work with the NHL. I said, I'd love to make a professional flying saucer. And basically, Zach goes, I don't even know if Bob's going to be interested. I'll let you know if I call you back, maybe he's interested. Next day, call me, goes, I spoke with Bob. He's willing to talk to you. So it all started with him kind of interviewing me, going, who are you? And how would you do this if you did this? And what would you want to do? And I think my answers gave him the confidence that I knew what I was doing. And he says, sounds like you really know what you're doing. Come and see me, and we'll go through the whole schematics of the craft. And that's how it started. And from 2 years ago to now, we went from making the craft to then making the hangar, making the equipment in the hangar, then making the facility, the whole S4 facility. And then and this is, by the way, when I say making this, it started off with a very basic program. And then we totally turned on full thrusters, and we went into 3D. And I hired a whole team, international team from multiple different countries: Finland, Sweden, Lithuania, Japan, England.
Wow.
There was designers here in Montreal. Montreal is one of the hubs for video games and all that. So
I was born in Montreal.
Yeah. So you know that, right? So there's Ubisoft is here and all that. So we have a tremendous amount of talent here. So we started investing a tremendous amount of money into recreating it in a 3D professional environment, because Bob was willing, seeing what we were doing, he started getting interested in saying, well, this is an opportunity for me to make this as clear as possible for everybody. So it became this big project. From a flying saucer, it turned into this project. And then as we were building it in Unreal Engine, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's an Epic game. Epic Games has created Unreal Engine. At the time, we had Unreal Engine 4. Now we're in Unreal Engine 5.3. We've got metahumans. We've been working with
wow.
we even got a lot of beta tested. We're beta testing some tech. One of them was one that Steven Spielberg's involved in, so that it allows us to create more realistic characters in an Unreal environment. And we basically said, let's not just do this for VR. Let's make the most realistic documentary if Bob's interested. And when I said, would you be willing to be interviewed specifically about every part of S4? And he says, absolutely. He says, just for me to see what you guys have done, he goes, I feel more than confident to be speaking about it. And
because you're doing it justice to his standards. Yeah.
The number one thing I promised, and it was really like a promise to Bob Lazar when I first met him. He's a super, super humble, nice guy. I said, whatever I do, whatever information you provide me or provide my team, I will promise you that whatever you tell me is what we're going to put out there. I said, we're not going to take something and then twist it to make it something else.
Like documentary films normally do, or series, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I said, what we are doing is basically, crossing the T's and dotting the I's and making sure everything about S4 is accurate. So it took a long time, because as we were building it, we would Zoom call like this, and we would run him through the environment. And I remember the first time we brought him in S4, the very, very first time, as soon as he walked in, he said, stop, you got something wrong. And it was instant. He's like, that's completely not the right size. You made that too big. No, it was just not like that. So immediately it allowed us to start going, okay, so we refocus things. And then when we finally got it better, we walked him through past the hand scanner, past the card, and get into the hallway. And once he was in the hallway, he said, "Holy shit, you did it." He goes, "That's exactly what it looked like." And then I walked him into the lab, and he says, "Oh God, you fucked that up." He goes, "It didn't look like that."
Okay.
So we had to make a lot of corrections to the lab.
Luigi, I don't know how, these virtual worlds are made, especially with Unreal Engine, but is a specific designer assigned just like one specific room to work on? Or is it like everybody works on everything?
The way we split the tasks was based on people's specialties. So I had like people who would actually design the craft, which is different than the people who are doing the texturing. There's people that are just in charge of lighting, and that's all they do is they'll come through and they'll do a pass through on lighting.
Right.
There's other people that are more experienced in terrain, because what we did is not only did we create S4, but we have the entire Groom Lake and Papoose mountain range created in a VR experience in real size. So you can imagine if you're outside of the Papoose, the hill there near Papoose Lake where this was located, the dry lake, the Papoose mountain range, the whole area there is a completely like that is not something you'll find the geodata easily online. So we had some terrain experts do a tremendous amount of work.
Wow.
Going to Russian satellite data. We spent months recreating.
You didn't half-ass this at all.
Zero.
No,
If this thing is so accurate that I'm pretty certain that, whoever has been out there will know that we did the work to get it accurate to 100%.
So it seems like the general nature of your project is to create like a sort of Bob Lazar canon of this is the official account of what the place was like taken
Right.
with Dreamland, the book, and your VR environment, and this documentary. For anybody who has questions, this will be Bob Lazar's official
Absolutely,
story.
yeah. Which is a lot of times what I found to be frustrating online. If you're reading about Bob Lazar, and there's a lot out there. I mean, there is a lot of data out there. Is even the best researchers in the field would know a lot about the story, but then would not know certain particularities about the craft, or about how the craft was sitting in the hangar, or how it was. How the configurations were. And we thought, if we are to recreate for the world to see what a true reverse engineering program looked like in the late 1980s, how did they do that? How was that created? Why would have they done it this way? Why were these dimensions used, or this configuration used? So we thought, although it's something that you could read about, you never really get the picture, because nobody's ever gotten a picture. I mean, the only things we can look at is declassified or open source data on hangars, Air Force, base hangars and stuff like that. So you get a lot of ideas what a hangar looks like, or how the stealth fighter was being built back in the 80s. There's pictures now out there, but you don't really get like what's happening at Skunk Works, what's happening behind the scenes, in the super secret environments. You don't get that. So this was not just a flying saucer project, but also the military installation process. How was it made? And as I was explaining earlier, just before we got on the call, even Jim Goodall was one of our consultants at a certain point, because wherever Bob couldn't remember something, for instance, Bob could say the craft was here, the doors were here, and the most important parts he remembered. But then if I asked him, or we asked him, where was the beam, like the metal beam that was
the support beam, yeah,
the support beams, how were they spaced? And he'll go, I don't remember because I wasn't paying attention to that. You know what I mean? That was not where my attention was, or where was the fire extinguisher in the hallway?
Yeah, I would find it extremely unusual if a person claimed that they could remember that level of detail. I mean, I don't know where my own fire extinguisher is.
Exactly. So that's my point. So where we went into such hyper detail that Bob would always say, look, man, he goes, I don't remember those things. So I recommend you try to research how the military built them. And I'm pretty sure it'll be accurate to whatever must have been there. So whenever you'll see what we've done, there's, I would say 60, 70% Bob. And then there's 30, 40% research of military stuff and how we put it together. Yeah.
If anybody nitpicks about where a fire extinguisher is located in a military facility, I think that's clearly missing the point.
He must be full of shit because he doesn't remember where the fire extinguisher was.
Yeah.
Everybody knows where the fire extinguishers are. Yeah.
Right.
I know. But you know what's fascinating is that you're taking us back to 1988, 89. And this is the facility they had at the time. You got to think we're 2023.
Right.
And I'm sure after Lazar came out, and, you know, I always say in his defense, there's two things that Lazar did that no critic has any counter to what I say. One, we did not know about S4 Area 51 till Bob Lazar came out in 1989, right? None of us knew about it. It wasn't on our radar. Well, some people did, but most of the world did not.
Right.
The other thing is he brought people out to the desert often at 7:30 on a Wednesday night in the middle of the desert, because that's when they would fly the crafts.
Right.
That's amazing. So those two things sort of go, okay, well, nobody really has a counter to that because it's true. One question that I had, though, did you guys work at all on when the craft is activated?
Absolutely.
Oh, really? Could you talk a little bit about that for us?
Sure. Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a difference between, I just want to make sure that we distinguish the difference between the craft being activated and the craft operational outside flying, because Bob never saw how the craft was able to be flown. Right. He actually did see it in flight, but he in a low power test, but never understood how that was done. He was, though, inside the craft with his lab partner, Barry, and there was another team inside the craft. When he was given access to the interior of the craft one time, there was another team working in the front. We call it the front of the craft because we've determined, we assume it is the front of the craft, where they were working by one of the archways. And when he was in there, him and Barry were pretty much just to figure out how the configuration was, where this gravity reactor, well, let's call it a gravity reactor, but it was what they considered to be the power of the craft, power source of the craft. They put the gravity reactor in the center of the craft, and there's this waveguide that comes and locks itself on top of the hemisphere of the reactor. And basically that's on. Now it's on. If the reactor is on and the waveguide is on, this thing is on. Now it
makes no noise though, right?
It doesn't, it's not on like making, it's not like you hear something and it's on. It's just, it's something's happening. And at the same time, while he was in the craft, and you'll actually see this in our film, we've developed a absolutely stunning VFX scene where we actually had Bob on a green screen. So it's actually him going to be inside the craft. And when this actually happened in 80 and 89, he was leaning down. It's pretty small, by the way. You can't stand into this thing unless you're standing right in the middle of it. But he's leaning down with Barry where the reactor was. And whatever team was working by the archway must have done something that let the archway become clear. So suddenly this metallic, let's call it I don't know if you want to call it like a metallic wall, just became clear. And that caught his attention. Barry must have already known about this, but Bob had never seen this. So he stood up, kind of like, what the hell is that?
Right.
And this and about 1/3 of the archway became blue, like as if it was a screen that came up. And there were these black symbols that Bob referred to them. They looked like eyes. He says they were like oval shape with these dots in the middle, and they looked like a lot of eyes.
Okay.
And he said they were kind of tilting like this, like these symbols were like moving in the screen. And it's funny because there's a moment where he said, I just started walking, just moving towards the archway because I was so curious, but he was not allowed to do that. So Barry was just calling out to him, going, Bob,
yeah,
you know, you can't do that. So he says, I remember getting really mesmerized with the fact that, you know, this thing just became transparent. So that is something that he assumes the craft is on. I mean, if it's doing that, there's something's powering the craft. But other than that, there was not ever something that would have given him the impression that the craft is ready to levitate or anything like that.
Right.
So there's a lot of missing data there in terms of what he actually was physically able to see versus then physically seeing the craft outside lifting off for a low power test. And he says, I have no idea how they got that to happen.
So I have a question. It's more, I don't know if you could answer this, but you've been working on this project for quite a bit. The crafts on the inside, it looks like it's 3D printed because the floor melds into the chair, that melds into the table, that everything's melded into each other like a mold.
Right.
Do you think that that's crucial for the crafts to be able to operate within that gravitational field? Like not having any seams, any lines?
I can't say that I can't say myself that it makes that's why.
Right.
Bob says it must have some value that everything is the same material and everything is just has
melded,
it's a curvature. Everything is one piece. So it looked like it was just one big piece.
Like a hot tub, you know, the inside of a hot tub. Yeah.
That's right.
So it's injection molded or something
exactly.
like this entire room.
Yeah. He said this many times publicly. He says it looked like it was made out of wax and then you heated it and then everything just rounded off itself. So there was no sharp corners anywhere. The only place where I can say there were sharp corners, because we built it, like I know the craft like to the millimeter. So the only place in the craft that we know for a fact had a 90-degree angle was there's an indentation in the ground in the very center of the craft that is a square that is perfectly square. It doesn't have rounded, it's just a perfect square.
Okay.
And that's where the reactor sits. It just kind of sits in there. It's a slight indentation into the ground, and it just, this square base sits right in there. That's it. There's everything else has got a radius of curvature. So even when we were building it, even in 3D, whatever you do in 3D, anybody who knows how to build things in 3D, whether it's Blender or whether you're creating it in Unreal, you don't build things like that. That's not how you usually build things. So it becomes a challenge, regardless of your expertise in design in 3D, to create this 52-foot structure that is all kind of built together. So
that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting that, you know, with your technology, the abilities that we have to do design, that is still a challenge.
Oh, it was a challenge
to do it digitally to what they made physically.
Absolutely,
that's crazy.
I mean, part of that's why the software. That's part of that is the way the software is made, right? It's all sort of object oriented and it assumes 90-degree angles and things. So did you have to piece together the craft out of actual boxes in the virtual environment and then sort of apply a sort of Gaussian skin over it or something to make everything smooth?
I'm gonna say that there's a lot of technical things that I would not be able to give you. My team would be experts at telling you how they did that. But what I do remember is that, for instance, what we had to do is, let's say we were making the seats. What we assumed are the seats. We had to make the seat independently. We couldn't make the seat out of the floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So we had to create it independently so that we would have the shape and the curvature and the structure proper. And then once you have that, you have to blend it into the floor. But in that to happen properly is not that easy. It's not that simple to make it perfect. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who, you know, mess around with the tech and they'll go, yeah, it's not that complicated. Right. If you don't have accurate precision measurements, it's easier. But if you have to make everything precise, it's a little more difficult.
I'm sure.
I can tell you that. Yeah.
So when you said that you were making like a consumer grade product, was your initial idea to make like a physical model that I could buy and put together like a hobbyist?
No, it was actually not going to be one to be put together. We were going to make one in die cast, which we're still
take my money.
Still on our radar. Absolutely. And so the actual professional grade die cast model is not listed on our website, but I can confirm to you that once all these 3 products are out, we are going to be making the most accurate, most high quality representation of the sport model in die cast like you've ever seen. It'll really be a beautiful piece.
Wow. Well, definitely hit me up when you produce one. I'll support the crap out of that. Promote it on UAP Studies podcast. Buy one. No, this in the project, I mean, obviously it's in 3 parts. You got the documentary coming out first. Now we're looking at a launch. You're thinking maybe about February, March of next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're really hoping that does stay within that, because, you know, and I'll tell you right now, it doesn't just have to do with us with the film. It also has to do with distribution. So there's a part of putting it out on the market that is not in our control. So even though we know we'll have it ready, we're not sure if it'll actually hit the market in February. The whole team is aiming for February. It's like we're like zeroed in. It's like a target for us. But I always keep a little bit of loose in case, I don't know, you know, whatever could happen. That could be, maybe it'll be delayed to March or something. I don't know that, but I do know that we're hyper focused for February. Yeah.
Nice.
But early next year, it will launch.
Yeah. So the documentary comes out first. In the documentary, you said you're focusing on how he got the job at S4 to begin with, right? And interestingly, you were mentioning Jim Goodall. I just have a Jim Goodall story. I was talking with him not too long ago, and he mentioned he had met Bob in 1988 or something like that, right before Bob started working at S4. And Bob told him that he absolutely thought people believed in aliens and spaceships were ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh man, I laughed when he said that, because I'm like, his life changed like within months, right? Everything changed for him. So I thought that was cool. But so talk a little bit more about the documentary. So we know more about the VR experience, where's that going to be available, by the way, the VR experience?
The VR experience is going to be available. I foresee it's going to get published on Steam. So it'll be available on to be experienced. We're calling it S4 the Experience. Okay. VR experience is going to be called S4 the Experience. And that is going to be available for people who don't have access to computers. They only have their phone. We'll have a mobile phone version of it. It'll be a lower quality, obviously. Then we'll have like your standard PC version. Then we'll have like your super computer version. And then you got the VR goggles where you could literally walk, and you could walk for 10 kilometers if you really want to, because it's that big, you know, and it'll be super realistic. It's interactive completely. So you're going to be with Bob. You either have the choice to have Bob with you in the VR experience or not. And everything is interactable. So when you walk in, you put your hand on the hand scanner, it lights up, your little badge comes out. You have to take that and swipe it in front of the security access panel. The door unlocks, you walk in, you can turn lights on and off. You could open doors, close doors. You could go into the lab and throw things around. If you drop the element 115,
like a sandbox environment.
Yeah.
Right?
Like it's completely interactable. So what's super cool about it is that it's not just something that you're walking through and you're just looking at. you can actually do stuff. So, and if I think we're gonna be building in some features in there that are really cool. So if somebody does really know what they're talking about and they're in the lab, they can take the reactor. Somebody, you know, you could take the element 115, don't put it in the reactor, just bring everything in the hangar, then go into the craft, put the element 115, the cap, the hemisphere, put it in place, bring down the waveguide and activate the craft. Like if you know how to do that, you'll be able to do that, you know? So it'll be really interesting because it's kind of an educational piece as well, so that it'll make people truly appreciate and understand what that process was. A lot of times people don't get it. When Bob says there was this hemisphere, you have to put it on, you know, that they're not fully comprehending it until you can do it yourself, and then you'll see it. We're going to have the candle experiment. I don't know if you're familiar with the candle experiment.
No. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and there was so you'll be able to see the candle experiment, which was
light bending. Is that this?
No, it's in the lab. This happened in the lab. There was the emitter of the craft, which is a big cylindrical. It's like a 4-foot by 2-foot cylinder, which sits on the bottom portion of the craft, in the lower level of the craft. The cylinder was in the lab, and it was on its side on a table to the left of the reactor, and on the ground there was an amplifier that was cut out of the actual craft. In Bob's experience, when he walked into the craft, one of the amplifiers had been removed before he had ever been there, probably with a plasma cutter. So it was sitting on the floor of the lab. And when you activated the reactor in the lab and you twisted the emitter a little, I can't remember the degree, we have it in the project. Well, it creates there's some gravity field that is, something's happening coming out of this emitter. And they had a candle set up that was pointed right where the emitter was. And when all this thing activated and Barry, the lab partner, twisted the emitter, the candle flame froze in time. So Bob saw it and thought, that's impossible. He said the photons were still there. You could still see the light from the candle, but it looked like a picture. He says it no longer looked like it was like alive, you know, like
moving, yeah,
moving, whatever. So he says that really freaked me out, because he goes, it looked like I was looking at a picture, and that was impossible, because how did that happen? How could it just stop it in time? Yet I'm still seeing the photon, I'm still seeing the light. So you'll be able to see that part of the interactive VR.
So there's like Easter eggs in there.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of Easter eggs.
Do you get a short round dude, bald, named Dennis that comes up your ass every once in a while and
Dennis
harasses you?
Yeah, Dennis Mariani's been created. Barry has been created. There's this guy Renee is going to be there. There's the security guards. Obviously, there's quite a few security guards. There's the nurse. The only woman he ever saw at S4 was the nurse. He never everybody else, he said everybody was male. He never saw any women, because it's possible, he says might have been, but he says I never saw them.
Right. But 1988, what are the chances that you had a lot? It was rarer in those days to have specialists, right?
Yeah. But we've recreated all these characters, obviously, as metahumans. Let's assume, you know, I mean, we don't have real actors playing them in there.
Yeah, we had Dennis come in and do the voiceovers. Yeah, that'd be funny.
Well, I mean, there's things that Dennis Mariani did. If you read Dreamland, there's some pretty interesting stuff, how he was handling element 115 and all that. So you'll see this in this not only the movie, but you'll also have it available to you in the interactive experience. In fact, in the interactive experience, if you walk where you're not supposed to walk, the security will come and give you shit for doing that. Yeah.
You should have it where if you walk a little further, it's like, remember GoldenEye Bond? Whenever you would die, you would see all the blood come down the screen. That's what should happen to you.
One of the things that we were debating about, actually, because there's going to be a limitation to the VR experience,
Right.
that once you pass a certain threshold in the base, you will be notified that you are no longer in the Bob Lazar experience. Meaning that we did build the whole 9 hangars, but he never went there. So you could go.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can actually go there, but as soon as you pass a certain threshold, Bob says, I didn't go there, so that's
no longer canon. You're outside of the Bob Lazar universe now.
Exactly.
No part of the canon.
As long as he knows where the fire extinguishers are in each building, then we're good to go. Luigi, you got some pictures to show us. I thought maybe we could go over some of them and you could talk to us about what was going on at the time.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Let me share my screen. Let me go here. All right.
You got to understand, this is like Christmas, finding out what my Christmas presents are in advance for me, right? Yeah. This is huge. So
like full screen, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So this is just a picture of Bob, myself, and Christopher, who's my right hand in the project. He's like the magician here who does a lot of this stuff. And this is when Bob came to Montreal, spent a whole week with us. Literally, this was like the final touches of S4. Right. So once we got to a point, we obviously filmed with him here in Montreal, but this was an exceptional opportunity to sit with him and show him everything and him really making corrections. So you would have, let me see if I could go to the...
And Luigi, is this a Canadian project? Because I know it's under the We Are Not Alone production. Yeah. So it's a Canadian project, right?
Absolutely. Fully Canadian project. Yeah.
Yeah, Canada.
Yeah, right. So as you can see, we brought Bob into Unreal and he was, making comments, making small corrections, the color. One of the things that actually we did when he was here was the craft texture. We thought we had it perfect. And once he was here and we were really like hyper analyzing it, we made a final correction to the craft texture because Bob was always he always said it wasn't 100% sure if it was metal or a ceramic or some type of other type
hybrid.
Of material. Yeah. So, but trying to get the right grain on it, trying to get the usage of it, by the way, because he said it looked like a new craft, but you could see that there was a little bit of wear and tear on the actual craft. So that was important to get because we really wanted to get that accurately. That's just a picture of Bob here in Montreal on a green screen. And this was a technical marvel. We were able to get hours of him on a green screen doing multiple different movements that he had done because we're going to be taking all these videos and then including Bob into the real environment. The Unreal environment. So it's a beautiful mix of real Bob in the Unreal environment that looks very real. So it'll be very visually stunning to see.
Looking forward to that, man. That's going to be so cool.
This is a cool picture. This is Vanessa, one of our team members here, and she's filming Bob on the green screen. And if you look on the left side here, we had this television set up right behind the camera. And you'll see that it's the craft in the hangar. I don't know if you could tell. A little bit. And what happens was Bob was on the green screen, but he was actually able to see where he was in the hangar. So if he was walking around, he would not at least bump into something while we're filming on that. So it's very, very cool tech and very
kind of like the Lord of the Rings of ufology. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of what you guys did. Yeah.
So that was really interesting. That's when we went to Oregon. That's actually at Bob's personal lab, us interviewing him there. We have hours and hours of him talking about S4 here. This is
got a death ray in front of him. Yeah, for those of you who can't see it.
Yeah. Super cool. That's great. If anybody's ever seen this thing in operation, this thing is really cool. I mean, this thing.
What is it?
It creates it's an invisible, soundless, and completely invisible death laser. It will burn through anything instantly. And when he activated the thing and made us see what it did, I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff. Like I was also in the army in my life. So I've seen a lot of stuff. This thing blew my mind because this thing just sits there. It doesn't make a sound. You hit this big giant button and it'll burn a hole into thick wood like that. And there's no beam, there's no sound. It just happens.
He's brilliant. Like he can build
really,
anything, this guy.
Really
yeah, he's
cool.
nuts.
Yeah. You know, anybody who says Bob Lazar is not a scientist, I will argue that to the last day of my life. I'm telling you, this guy knows how to make really, and I genuinely believe that he is, in fact, a scientist. Maybe not mainstream scientist. Maybe not one of the, you know, the typical scientists that you'll see in academia. But this man is brilliant and is a true scientist.
Yeah, I think some of the people who make the claim that he's not a scientist are trying to distinguish between researchers and people who are engineers. Like engineers generally aren't considered scientists in academia because they're not doing research.
They're not doing research. That's correct.
Well, and this is why they hired him at S4 anyways, because the kid was what, 29, 28?
He's 29 years old, and I mean,
thinking outside the box all the time, right? So
he always thinks outside the box. That's Bob. That's his MO. So this here is his very good friend Mario Santa Cruz, who is, by the way, become friends with me. I think this is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life.
Nice.
Mario, I mean, he was there right when all this happened. And Mario was actually witness to a couple of things that were happening to Bob after they kicked him out of the project. So Mario is a very, he's like a big, giant, scary looking teddy bear. You know, he says it all the time. He says, if people don't believe Bob, he says, they were not there. I was there. He goes, this happened. This stuff happened to this man. So, we were really happy to include Mario. Love the guy. He was a great addition to the movie. There's a beautiful shot of Bob and his wife at their home today. This is their life. She's an amazing woman. She's got horses and takes care of a bunch of animals on their land. They have this beautiful greenhouse. They live in Oregon. It's paradise. I'm telling you, it's absolutely beautiful. Simple people.
They live in Oregon. I didn't know that. That's pretty close to me, actually.
Yeah. They're very, and we just really have we had great chemistry. I think part of the reason why this project is doing so well is I think my whole team and Bob and his wife and his entourage, everybody just loves each other. Everybody just got along.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting is before we ever even went to see Bob as a team, I had part of some people on my team that were not 100% convinced about Bob. Some of them were skeptics, some of them going, I'm not too sure. And it was unanimous after spending a couple of weeks with Bob. Everybody literally said, we all believe him. Like, this man is 100% for real. Like you have, and this is something that is hard to swallow for somebody who was a little bit of a skeptic, because I get it. You don't have the opportunity all the time. But if you spend enough time with the man and you spend enough time, not just talking about flying saucers. I mean, there's this, Bob knows way more about anything else than he knows about flying saucers. If you spend time with him and get to know him, there is absolutely nothing about this man that will raise a flag.
There's no ego to him, as far as I can tell.
God, no. God.
He's very humble. And
actually, I'll even add something really important, which I started realizing that I have to say this because I see some comments online. People are like, oh, he's trying to profit. You know that from the very beginning, Bob said, I don't want anything. He's offered his time. He's opened his home to me. He's opened his home to my team. We've done tons of work, brought him here, spent tons of time with him. And he says, I'm just glad we're making this accurate. he says, I'm just very happy this is becoming as serious as it is, and it's showing the true story of what I saw, the true realistic stuff of what I saw. He's not looking to profit from this. It's not in any way. I could feel that from him. Everybody felt that from him. So, you know, that's a big thing when you think about somebody of his stature, like public, a lot of people know about him. I mean, obviously, after 35 years, I wouldn't judge the guy if he wants to make a little bit of money, but that was not ever something that was an issue with us. So that's a really important point.
I will say that since you're offering that observation sort of as a reason to believe or take him at his word, I will point out that you do have financial entanglements with him. You have your own particular interests at stake here too. So I wouldn't expect you to shit on him if there were points at which you thought maybe he will.
I will tell you. Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and that's a very good statement. I will say something, and I'm usually not one who holds back, because it really that's my personal character. I will say that I would not just praise the man just because I'm invested in a project. And simply one of the reasons why I say this, and I mean this, is I said, even if, and this is where I go to the outer edge of the whole story. I say, if this was not real, okay, if all this was not real, first of all, wow, if it was not real, I said, my team and I all sat down and said, well, regardless, it's a pretty inspirational story. And if we do this really well, it's just super cool anyway. So
no doubt. Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean?
I think what you're doing is absolutely worth doing, regardless of what the actual truth is. And I'm constantly holding two different theories in my head whenever I think about Bob Lazar. One theory is that he's telling the truth, and the world is a bizarre and amazing place. And the other theory is that if he's not telling the truth, then he's an extremely convincing liar. Oof. And I mean, if that's the case, you are saying the things that I would expect a person to say, that he seems genuine and convincing, and everybody around him who was a skeptic came in and were not convinced so much by facts, but by actually experiencing the person. And that comports with both theories. So either one could be true, but in either case, what you're doing is valuable and interesting, and certainly is historic in the world of UAP studies. So nobody can come along and say that what you're doing isn't valuable because of whatever theory they have about Bob Lazar.
Right. And I'll tell you another thing, and this is just to really go and there's something that happened one time. I don't even think Bob, I don't know if I ever told Bob, but something happened one time when he was giving he was giving me measurements. Okay. We were doing, at the very beginning, it was a very long and tedious job of measurements. Okay. So it gets boring after a while, because if you're measuring things, it's very technical. There's a lot of engineering going around. So there was something about the entrance to the craft, like how you walk into this craft. And he had given us some measurements. He had explained part of the design of this entryway. It was tapered up at the very beginning, at the very top end of it. You had to bend down and crawl into the craft. And there's the reversed American flag to the left side of the entrance that is right there. There was something that he did when we were at his home, when I was at his home the very first time, that really caught my attention, where I just knew this guy was not bullshitting. He knew something about that entrance. And it was the way we measured it and the way we were putting it all together. And I couldn't figure something. I couldn't get the proper data right. And I said, but I said, isn't it too narrow? And he was like, I can't remember. And then he says, hold on a minute. So he turns around and he opens up his patio door. I'll never forget. He opens up his patio door. He stands in the doorway and closes the patio door on himself. And he's like, all right. He goes, here, measure this. He goes, because now I feel exactly how tight it was. And so, you know, the way he did that, you had to be there. I mean, it might not please a lot of people. They'll say, come on, he could be bullshitting. It didn't. It looked genuine from him. Like he said, I wanted to give me a perfect feel of how narrow that thing was. And he says, it's my body. I didn't gain that much weight since I was that young. And so he goes, if you measure, and he goes, come here, Luigi, just take a tape measure and measure now, you know? And it was just so interesting. And I said, wow, it is narrow. He says, I told you, it's tiny. It's not made for us. You know, it's tiny.
Well, the craft was designed for smaller entities. He said, like,
sure.
the size of a 7-year-old or something. Right? Like,
it's a tiny little, for sure. It's for tiny beings. It's not for
So my skeptic's take on that is that it strikes me, those are the details that strike me as more convincing, because memory is sensory in nature. People who are fabricating tend not to be very good at fabricating memories that have a sort of sensory richness to them and a kind of embodied feel and veracity to them. So the skeptics who say, well, that's just bullshit, you can just pull a door, there's something there to me that feels more substantial than just, oh, it's kind of convincing. It's convincing for a reason, because it actually has a feel of a memory, maybe.
Yeah, I'm serious when I say, you know, I kind of remember that moment. It was something that actually caught my attention. I don't think even Bob realized it, but I remember going, you can't bullshit that. You just can't bullshit that. It was just too perfect, and it was so genuine the way he did it, that he wanted to absolutely explain to me, you know, because I was really, because what that would have done, the reason why I was so particular about it was about the interior of the craft, where there's these archways, and it was bugging me. Something on the inside was bugging me on how one of the archways ended on the floor with the entrance there. So when we did that, and when we measured it like that, it was perfect with the architectural design that we had. So, you know, even if he was bullshitting, it was a perfect.
He lucks out too much.
Yeah,
too much.
It was like too perfect in order to fit so well. And those are things that I kind of, you know, picked up and said, this guy is so for real. I mean, that's just one of them. I could go on and on about a whole bunch of other things that happened during the last 2 years, but that was one that I really considered to be genuine when we were going through the schematics of the craft. I'm going to show you. Okay. This image here of the, and this, by the way, is at, I would say, my God, like maybe 80% realism. It's not even at full realism. It actually maybe even less, because we did these just for the show. This is this little room where there was the hand scanner, the famous hand bone scanner. It was set up outside on this little wooden table like this. There's a plug on the other side. You can't see it here. You'll be able to see it in the VR experience. And you just put your hand up on this. The machine lights up. There's a little card that pops out. You use the card to swipe. You swipe your card into the card reader, and it unlocks one of these doors. And then you end up. This is just a close up of the machine.
Wow! Look at that detail. So for the viewers or the listeners, me showing an up close look at this panel. I mean, you could see scratches, dents on the surface of the metal, the writing, it's made in New York. Is that Dentamat 2000? Like, you could see such rich detail in just an up close shot. And
this was actually, this machine was actually created by Stellar Systems back then. And it was put out, I think, in the, I don't remember. We have it written down in our papers, but this was something that was considered to be one of the best security, machines back at the time, which apparently were not even that great, but they were considered to be pretty good at the time.
But Luigi, didn't a bunch of people say that Lazar was lying, that this thing didn't exist?
Well, first off, there's something that I will say. a lot of people said but Lazar was lying, this thing didn't exist. And then there's this scene in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I don't know if you guys know about it, but in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you actually see this machine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's in the movie Close
Did
Encounters.
not know that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can actually Google that after this interview. One of the things I will say, because there's a ton of people out there that are saying, "Oh, you know, Lazar lied about that. It's in the movie Close Encounters. You should go see it." Well, I'm from the 70s. I was born in the 70s, and I remember the 80s very well. And I remember life without the internet. I remember life without information available to me. I remember those days very well. Okay. I remember not knowing something until I freaking found
a library.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to a library.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Because you just didn't get information that way. So one of the things that strikes me is when I see this new generation, you know, go, oh, look, it was in the movie Close Encounters. He knew that this machine was reading the density of bones. And no, he didn't. That everybody who saw that machine in Close Encounters, all they saw was a light light up a hand. Nothing in the movie Close Encounters indicated that this was a bone scanner, a hand bone scanner. Nothing indicated that this was specifically used at Area 51. None of that. So it always makes me laugh when people say, oh, it was on Close Encounters. That's why Bob said that. Well, then where did he get the information that it was a hand bone scanner? Because I would, if I don't know, I would think it's reading my digital print, it's reading my fingerprints or whatever. I don't know. I wouldn't immediately go and think it's reading the density of my bones.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me as a particularly strong argument against Bob Lazar's claims, because we know that Spielberg did a ton of real deal research for Close Encounters.
That's right.
And you might expect that if the two people were telling the truth, that there would be confluence about sort of machinery and technology that they encounter. I think so. That strikes me as kind of just a weak argument, even though I think there are stronger arguments, but that one just seems kind of stupid.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we recreated the machine, obviously in the 3D environment. It's fully functional, and when you'll see it in the movie, obviously in the movie it's just a visual, but when you experience it in the VR, you'll really enjoy it, because you really have to put your hand there. It's gonna pull out your card. So it's
better than a rectal scanner, right?
No.
Nobody wants to use that one. That's
let's not yuck anybody's yum here.
It's how you get definite identity.
Absolutely, everybody's rectum is like a snowflake.
Yeah, well, at this point,
I'm sorry. I'm a purist about my virtual environments, and for the purists out there, Bob Lazar's book opens with him doing paperwork. Can I do real paperwork in your environment? Can I sit for 2 hours
actually, no. Yeah, actually, it's funny that you say that. You're not going to be able to fill up the 1010 forms and all that, but you will be able to read through some of the briefing documents.
No way. There's actual documents.
Yeah. You'll actually be reading through some briefing documents.
There's so many Lazar Easter eggs in there.
There's exactly. So that's definitely going to be there for sure. So this is the hallway of S4. This is kind of like when you open the door, that's kind of what you'll see. It's this kind of a older, gloomy feel to it, very quiet, very.
And Luigi, just for clarification, is this underground or is this a building that's?
It's not underground. It's inside a mountain. It's inside a hill. So technically it's not underground because you don't
not below. Whatever.
It's not below the surface. Yeah, it's just in the mountain. So
it's hidden in a mountain. Okay.
Yeah, it's hidden in a mountain. Yeah.
Okay. It's quite the endeavor, though, eh?
It's quite a big facility because you have to consider there's 9 hangars. So the 9 hangars that's a long, structure. And so the hallway, which Bob calls the infinity hallway, he says you couldn't see the end of it. He says, consider that Bob never went beyond the cafeteria, which was the furthest he ever went to the right. the doors to the right. So he says, I was never able to go beyond. So in the VR, you'll also have the same problem, or not the problem, but you'll have the same notification where you're now leaving the perimeter of Bob's experience, and you could go roam around, but that doesn't mean that that's how it was. You know what I mean?
What do you build those environments for the places where it's like, I know there was something there, but I didn't get to go to it. How do you fill that out and make it something that can be explorable?
Yeah, the only thing that's going to be exploitable is going to be to the left side. The doors to the left are the ones that lead to the hangars. So there's doors to each hangar. So those are exploitable. And the ones that are going to be to the right, you won't be able, they're just like...
Oh, they're just locked.
They're just locked. Yeah, because it's completely impossible to know what was there. So we're not going to invent, you know what I mean? So yeah.
You should just have a random door that when you walk in, you see Eisenhower with a gray signing some sort of contract. Just for everybody who thinks that actually happened. That is so cool. What are the red boxes that we're seeing there next to the doors?
Those are the fire extinguishers.
So each door had one. Okay.
Yeah. Those are the fire extinguishers. There was actually a few of them. There's the fire alarm that was occasionally on at certain distances. The lights are accurate. The lighting itself is going to be very accurate. The bowling green cinder block, the bottom side are cinder blocks, bowling green painted cinder blocks, and the top of the wall is just drywall. And it was not white. It was just a very light, super light green. You could barely see the green in it, but it was a light shade of green. Okay. The doors were wooden doors with metal handles on them. Very basic. Each door to the left, where there's the propulsion lab and then all the hangars, have that little security panel that you have to swipe your card.
That's crazy. The level of detail that you guys have gone through.
Oh yeah,
is insane.
Oh yeah, this is the nurse station that we built. So this is accessed through one of the hallways.
Is this like an actual picture of the virtual game?
Yeah, This is a environment. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is not even at full quality, believe it or not. This is even like, I'm so with it. So it's not bad, but it gets even better than this. And this is where Bob was asked to go and do some allergy tests. They basically asked him to roll up his arm. He had to drink this little pine yellow liquid that smelled like pine. And then they drew a grid on his arm, and the nurse put all sorts of different drops on it to see if there was going to be a reaction, because apparently he was going to be in contact with foreign materials. So this is basically what the nurse station looked like at S4. Again, everything was very, very dull. It was quiet. There was never any sound, no music, nothing. You would hear occasional pacing. It might be security walking, but there was no interactions. Nobody was allowed to interact.
It's been so weird.
Yeah, he said it was a horrible environment to be in. So he said it was very stressful, considering how exciting the work was. The opposite was the actual real. The mood was very, very dull.
Yeah, it feels like a David Lynch movie. You're just sort of alienated constantly.
Yeah,
and
terrible. Yeah.
One thing that strikes me as really nice about these images is the lighting has this kind of like soft, reality to it. Do you know how many rounds of like bouncing your photons are doing in your environment?
Oh my God! Are you familiar with Unreal?
Oh yeah, a little bit.
You know what? Like all of our stuff gets filtered through path tracing. Like we do path tracing. That takes a while before it all, and then the rendering.
It's a lot of rendering. Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah. So the lighting I think the lighting is what took the longest in the project, to be honest. It's the lighting, it creates reality. I mean, lighting creates reality, right? So you could have the most realistic and assets, the most beautiful textures, beautiful colors. And if the lighting is wrong, it looks like crap. So we've spent a long time getting the lighting to really become as accurate as possible. And this applies for the interior lighting for nighttime, all the way to our UDS lighting with the sun, the moon, the real outdoor lighting. So there is a tremendous amount of like, I'm talking months of work to get this.
Yeah. I mean, it's evident even at like 80%. This is a better sort of luminous environment than we had 3 years ago in like a Pixar movie or something. So good job.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my team. It's my team. You got to say good job to the team. They freaking rock.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job.
This is inside the lab. On one of the benches, you have this black box to the right over there. It's a handheld X-ray machine. Here, right center is the reactor itself. This is the reactor that Bob and Barry were asked to work on throughout the whole time he was there. This is the hemisphere. You could see the element 115 on the table closer to the left side. That's sitting on the table. There's a cap that goes on top of the reaction tower. This is what it looked like. The material it looked like. We actually recreated it, and we also have a real model that we actually made for real that we have here at Motivo. Yeah, we actually built a real reactor.
This has got to be in your model, your die-cast model.
That's
so cool, man. That's so cool.
Yeah. It's certainly going to be there, and this is, I guess, it's more intricate. You'll see it in our project in the documentary film. We go through it. So you know how you have sometimes a car, they splice the car in half and you see all the interior. We actually did that with the reactor, so you could see everything on the inside. You know, so how it operates, how it functions, or how they thought it operated and functioned. And still to this day, Bob, says these are only assumptions. He says this is what we assume was happening, but we were not sure was happening. So, you know,
it's almost like magic to us. The technology is like magic to us. We just can't make.
It's that Arthur C. Clarke quote: "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable
from magic."
From magic.
So in this image, this chip of sort of like clayish, slightly red brown triangular thing. Yeah, the idea is that is a solid piece of machined 115, or that it's a sort of ceramic that has 115. You take it and insert it into the reactor, and this begins some sort of
you have
quasi-nuclear reaction.
You have to insert it inside the tower, and then place the cap on top of the tower, and then you take the hemisphere, and as soon as the hemisphere is fully, like, the hemisphere has to touch the whole circular bottom portion of the hemisphere has to touch the base in order for it to be on. The moment it has just a slight lift, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So now, as far as the way that the element 115 has been manufactured, this was covered in the previous documentary that was done by Bob Lazar. He explained that. It'll obviously be re-explained in ours. That's something that he says, I don't know how they came to find out, but they obviously knew that that's how it was supposed to be done. And that's how they figured out that this had to be machined or cut in that specific manner in order for it to do that.
Your description of how the reactor works reminds me of the sort of early configurations of nuclear weapons. You had these two hemispheres of radioactive material, and they had to have perfectly flat faces, and you had to clap them together in this like perfect way to get the right density of nuclear material in order for it to generate a reaction. And so it seems like there's kind of a similar principle at work in the way that Bob imagines these things working.
I mean, look, Bob is always fascinated. Every time we would talk about this, he would always say, he goes, it always baffled them, regardless of them doing all these tests on this thing. He says, all we could do is run tests or figure out, what if we moved it this way? What if we put it side? Everything was just, he said, we wrote notes all day long just to see, does it do anything if we turn it at this degree? Will it explode? Will something happen? We don't know. He says, and one of the things that's really interesting is when I would always refer to it as a gravity reactor, at a certain point, Bob, when he was here in Montreal, said, I don't even know if it is gravity. He says, maybe this is just another force. He goes, we just don't know what this thing was producing. All we know is that it looked and felt like gravity to us. So he says it felt like it was creating a gravity field or an anti-gravity, if you want to call it. But he says maybe it's another force that we're not familiar with, that we are now perceiving as gravity. He says it's hard to tell. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know what gravity is. I mean, I'm not just saying that as like a layperson. The standard model of physics doesn't provide a very neat account of what gravity is. Right. Gravity is indistinguishable from acceleration on Einstein's models. So gravity is a gigantic mystery, how it works at various scales and things. And so part of my, if you don't mind me kind of talking out of my skeptic side of my brain right now, is that part of me says, well, Bob Lazar sounds like an engineer to me, and engineers and research scientists just do two different things, and one is not better than the other. For the people who are like, somebody's not a fucking scientist, that's as if that's a dig or something. Like engineers built the nuclear weapons, and they're not exactly research scientists. So part of me says, well, why did they hire a person who doesn't understand physics at the level of a research physicist to do this? That sounds weird to me. But then another part of me says that, okay, there's this phenomenon in sort of management of scientific organizations where you hire a person with a very particular niche level of understanding that's lower than what is actually required for doing the maximum amount of the job. For instance, at a nuclear power plant, you don't hire physicists to run them. And there's a really good reason for that, which is that in the event of a disaster, physicists tend to think that they can improvise some creative solution to the problem. And that's not what you want. You want a person who will pull out a manual and who will do exactly what they are supposed to do, you know, in the manual. And I might be able to imagine an argument that goes something like this in favor of Bob Lazar's claims. He is not a research scientist. And it is strange that he would maybe be put in a position to do this sort of work. But if I had materials from a highly advanced, different civilization that I wanted reverse engineered, but I wanted to be able to control the knowledge that was in there, I would probably seek out a really skilled tinkerer who wasn't going to exploit the knowledge in ways that I couldn't, you know, anticipate them exploiting the knowledge, but who would be able to do practical work of getting it to do things and experiment with it. And maybe that's the kind of line of defense for, not defense, but at least a line of explanation for how this story all fits together, and why he's the person for it or whatever.
Well, I mean, if for the people who have been really following the story for years or read a lot about it, Bob has always been very, very clear and very transparent to the fact that he says, I don't think I was the right person they should have hired for that job. He always said that. He says, I don't feel that I was the best person. They could have hired people with a lot more experience than I had. I was very young at the time. He's also been very clear to the fact that he says, I would have preferred that they would have hired me for another part of this project. He was hired for the propulsion side of the project, which is Project Galileo. I don't know if you're familiar with the 3 projects that he mentioned out there. He was in what he called Project Galileo, but there was 2 other projects: Project Looking Glass, which looked at time distortion, and there was Project Sidekick, which was weapons applications. And Bob continues to this day to say, they should have hired me on Project Sidekick. I would have been a lot more interested in the power of the weaponry of this, more so than understanding the propulsion side of it.
Right, so, but from the sort of perspective that I'm trying to articulate here in my head, that's exactly why I, as a manager, might not hire him for that, because I don't want people who think this is neat and who are going to go beyond the job description of the research and tinkering that I might want them to do. So I'm always trying to craft the most plausible version of either story in my head, and maybe you're helping me get to a more plausible version of the pro Bob Lazar story with this.
One thing's for sure, Michael, is that I have a feeling that they were completely, utterly, my personal opinion. Okay. So this has nothing to do with what Bob thinks or anything. I think they must have got to a point where they literally were desperate for something. And I feel that there was pressure. I feel there must have been some type of timeline they had to hit for something. They had to get something moving. And for some reason, my feeling is that they got to a point where they said, okay, look, there's this kid. He seems like he's an out of the box thinker. It could be the wild card that we need. They might have never done that before. And this was like their last attempt to get somebody who's a little bit more quacky in doing crazier stuff in science. And possibly, this is my opinion, possibly that's what happened. Because when you're desperate and you have to provide some type of result, and you know that every step you've taken hasn't brought you anywhere further, you might go ahead and just fuck it. Let's try.
Throw it at the wall, see what sticks.
Let's see what happens. Yeah.
And it has the advantage of, if it doesn't work, you can always discredit this person because they don't have all the sort of like, it's really hard to discredit Robert Oppenheimer. He's so deeply networked within the world of like physics knowledge, and he's so respected and famous that you can try to throw him under the bus, but it's a lifelong project. But throwing somebody like Bob Lazar under the bus would be a triviality for the American government. So maybe that's a good line of reasoning in this.
What always fascinates me about this is that we know now, because of David Grush, that since 1933, the Americans have been collecting these crafts. Even Bob mentioned one of them or two of them could be archaeological digs. This is fascinating because this is their old shit. This is their old technology, and we still can't figure or wrap our heads around it. I don't know where we're at right now, 2023, if we made much headway since 1988. But, I keep thinking about Lazar, for good or bad, he changed things. And he's a historical figure at this point. And I'm pretty sure because of him, they had to move all those crafts out of there because he came out and talked about it. Like I don't see them holding those crafts there anymore. Everybody knows, everybody's always out there. So they must have moved them, but where do they move them to? And this is part of the, even what's happening right now, people coming out of the woodwork saying, no, I'm working on these projects. It validates Lazar that since 1989, the bugger's been telling us the truth, that the U.S. government, we know this because, we're talking with James Fox. He talks about Brazil, the states show up, grab the craft, grab the entities. In Canada. Canada, they did the same thing. They went to Italy. So, when you hear, Tim Burchett saying it's disheartening because they're telling them flat out to Congress, you're not getting anything. We're not telling you shit.
Right.
But this is taxpayers' money. Let's be clear. All these facilities, all this work, all the billions of dollars that go onto these projects are paid for by American tax-paying dollars. And they go missing every year. Nobody's held accountable for any of these projects. It's scary.
One of the things that, this is my opinion on something though, and I will say that it is very possible that a lot of that money comes from American taxpayer dollars. I don't doubt that there has to be some way that they funnel money to these programs. There's no doubt about that. But I also think that it's more complex than that. I think that there's possibly other ways that they were able to fund these type of projects, and they're completely unknown to us. We're also, we have to consider if all this is real. Okay, let's assume all this is real. This has been going on for like a long time. Obviously, they didn't stop doing this as soon as Bob Lazar left. They just either, like you said, they either moved it or they continued somewhere else. Whatever happened, this didn't stop. They didn't just close this up and said, okay, seal everything, blow up, and make all the rock fall on it and never touch it. There's no way that happens. So there's undoubtedly a huge operation behind something like this. I mean, this is not, Yeah, at the time, Bob said there were 22 people working at S4 when he was there. And so a lot of people might think, you know, a reverse engineering program, there might not be a lot of people involved, but it's kind of silly to think that after decades of trying to do something, that I am convinced there's a heavy operation going on. And within that operation, possibly people don't even know that they're part of it because they're not necessarily, you know.
Absolutely. That has to be the case. I mean, just from a
That's
strategic organizational standpoint, you want to have as many blinders on within the organization as possible. The CIA works that way all the time. They have bureaucratic departments set up specifically for the purpose of being able to silo knowledge, and that's a national security and a global security concern in some cases, and then you can abuse that mechanism in other cases. But I wanted to say that I agree with the point about being frustrated at the idea that we've been reverse engineering this stuff for so long. We still don't know how. I mean, this is their old shit, as you put it, Jason, which is absolutely plausible, right? But that's not actually unique in the history of world technologies. We still don't know how Greek fire was made. We still don't know how to make Japanese sword steel. I mean, there are a few steel masters in Japan who still know how to do it, but we can look at it, we can analyze it under scanning electron microscope or whatever. We can see its structure, but how to make it, we don't know. And that's just impossible in the minds of some people who think that technology and science is just this like progressive, inevitable march of additive knowledge, but it's not. You can have these gaps that you never ever fill in. And if there's technology that's coming from a civilization whose technological history evolved completely distinct from ours, I'm very skeptical that we would be able to successfully peel it apart and make it. We might be able to cobble together shit that they've left around and do neat things with it, but being able to actually reproduce it would be a whole
different thing,
lifetime of work.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, there's no doubt. We're talking and like Bob, you know, Bob said it to us many times. He says, I still think they don't know how this stuff works. They might have figured out some stuff, you know, but it doesn't mean, you know, it's like finding a cell phone in the
ancient Greece or something.
Yeah. And you find a cell phone, you eventually figure out that if you hold this button down long enough, it turns on the phone, you know, like, and then you go, oh, look, oh my God, there's a light in it. You know, it doesn't mean you know how to make it. You figured out how to turn it on. You found a way to do that. So, you know, there's a lot. And if it was something like find a cell phone, you know, 3,000 years ago, you're literally have to wait 3,000 years before you make the cell phone. So we're still far away from anything.
But isn't it cool that a technology, like if you think about it, great analogy, Luigi, that if you got a cell phone 3,000 years ago, if I'm a caveman or, you know, prehistoric man, this is a flat rock.
That's right.
That's my understanding of this. It's a flat rock until I turn it on. And then all of a sudden,
you're like, whoa, God's in it.
It's technology. What is it? How does it work? Right? Yeah, exactly. I have the leader now. I have the magic rock. But
this is like that movie, The Gods Must Be Angry. Is that the name of it?
Yeah,
the Coke bottle. It's hilarious. It's
the Coke bottle. Yes.
But my only thing is I think this is cool. I think this is, you know, knowing, you know, it's even seeing what it was like in 1988 and how far the government had gotten since 1933 with these projects, how much money they invested in these projects, how secretive these projects were. And
something that we don't talk about a lot, because it's kind of a very gloomy way of looking at things, but and conspiratorial, but who knows how many people have died because of this? I mean, we don't know. We don't know. It's like, it's not like we have that information. So, you know, what if?
Well, there's lists of names already out there, Luigi, of people that were researchers that mysteriously died or committed suicide.
We don't know. Like, it could be, you know, there could be a danger. There could be people that have been threatened and actually then got killed. We don't know. I mean, it could have passed right under our nose, and it could have looked like it was just something related to something else. We have no idea. It's, you know, this is, I in my personal experience in life, I'm an Italian from Italian family, Italian background. My parents born and raised in Italy. My grandparents, I mean, I spent years in Italy when I was younger. One of the things that I did experience in my life when I was younger was, and my father, by the way, straightest arrow, like one of the most honest people you'll ever meet in your life, you would have ever met in your life. But because he was a very known business person, got to meet with got to become very close with some of the most dangerous people in the Italian community. So the mob, if you want to call it. And I remember being very young, having these people come over. They would come over for dinner or whatever. And I grew up with these people. And I remember one time when I was talking to people about the secrets of the government regarding UFOs, and they were saying, we're going to try to get to the bottom of this. And I said, you can't even get to the bottom of the mob. You think you're going to get to the bottom of this? Like if you really look into how extremely silent the Italian community could be regarding the mob, if that is something I could consider to be one of the scariest things, because I've seen it, this is a million times bigger. So are we really getting the real story? Is there really like everything? No, we're not. It's just not. I don't believe so. This is my personal...
I would be really surprised if there's anybody who knows the whole story. I think probably the knowledge is all sort of piecemeal. I mean, in science and technology, there used to be this saying that nobody knows how to make a pencil, which is true. That people know how to make the different components of the different machines, but like it's all the knowledge is scattered completely across a bunch of different industries. It would have to be the same thing in this case.
Well, I'm showing you an image. I'm going to actually show you another image, and I'm going to go right into what you were saying. And this is like, here we are in a portion of the hangar. The door is open. You can see the craft in there. At the time, the craft was exposed. If you look at these images, this is basically what Bob Lazar saw. Okay. And I think back, and I've given this a lot of thought while I was doing the project. And I think, do you remember the movie E.T.?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember when the government showed up at Elliot's house and they covered the house with all this white tarp, and there was these like little passageways,
runways? Yeah.
Remember that? Remember all that? Like it looked like everything was quarantined, and it was
like an Ebola tent or something in Africa. Yeah.
I mean,
like COVID-19 hit again.
So imagine if you're this group of people who want a new scientist to go see a piece of the craft. Why do you have to show them the whole craft? Why don't we quarantine the craft? We put the tarp on the craft and create just a specific route within this quarantined tarp environment to get to one piece. The person could be standing inside the craft and not know they're in the craft. So we have to also think outside the box as people who are researching something like this, thinking, I mean, they must have learned their lesson. If what Bob Lazar saw and really happened, they must have thought, we got to stop showing people everything. And there could be a possibility of like quarantining environments or quarantining an area. Why does it have to be so exposed, open to everybody? So there's so many layers to something like this that, you could get a brilliant student from MIT who immigrated from China, who's got nothing but like top grades throughout their entire education, the best possible scientific mind you can find at MIT. And we have to be realistic. A lot of them are coming in from Asia. If you want to get one of those in the craft, if you want to get a person like that in the craft, but you don't want to jeopardize national security, you don't want to show too much, why would you show anything except for something that's very contained all the way to a very small piece of something? Or maybe this person is looking at an amplifier and it's just a rectangular box and they have no idea what they're looking at. They're just seeing a metallic box. They don't know this is inside a craft. They have no idea what this. We have this preconceived notion that everything is still like Bob saw, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
This might be bad news for you, though. So if I follow that train of thought, the next thing my brain says is, okay, then why don't we, if we do have certain capabilities to manufacture some of these things, like a seamless physical environment on the inside of the craft, why don't we just make a bunch of them and only make them inaccurate in lots of different ways? And then we'll have the guy who's working on the drive in the middle, we'll make that an accurate thing that he can tinker around with, but everything else will be sort of bullshit. We'll make the chairs too small so that they don't look like a human could be in there. And so on that line of thought, it kind of throws into question a lot of what Bob Lazar saw. Was that not the question of whether he actually saw it, which is a real question, but even if we grant that he did, yeah. I mean, if Penn and Teller were running this thing, it would be a illusion.
And Michael, I do agree with you, but I think that'd be too much of a costly endeavor to start doing, that sort of stuff. I think it's more cost effective for them to just make sure the guy's legit, passes clearance, clearance security, and then just go at it, right? My final question is, we're going to let you go soon here, Luigi. You've given us so much of your time already, but I always ask this to either an abductee or somebody who's been inside the craft. But does Bob remember the smell inside the craft?
Yeah, I asked him.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Smell is the one detail I cannot get from anybody. They'll tell me visual, the way they felt when they were touched, but they can never describe to me the smell.
Except Whitley Strieber.
Yeah. Bob had no, he says there was no smell of any type that would be something that would be worth noting.
Okay.
It just basically had
standard,
whatever the hangar smelled of, whatever it was. There was nothing. He said it was small. It was although it's a 52-foot craft, it's still very small, meaning you have to crouch down and crawl in there. You can eventually stand up when you're in the middle. I did it in VR, and it's true. It's small. It actually is small. If you don't want to touch the ceiling or whatever, you got to crouch down. He says it was hot a little bit because of the desert. So you have to consider the temperature in the base itself was not always very cold. So it was kind of warm in general. At night, it would get cooler. Obviously, it's the desert. So it's a different experience at night. He says, but sometimes it was a little hot, but that's it. He says nothing related to the craft. I think it's just the temperature, the ambient
environment,
but no smells, nothing.
And there'd be no wind in there anyways, right? Yeah.
Such an arid environment, all of those flavonoids and olfactory molecules are going to be so desiccated and dry and dispersed.
That's right.
Smells aren't going to last very long, even if you had a bunch of chili or something in the room.
Yeah, we actually had that conversation a couple of times, and he says, no, there's just nothing that I did. But I will say something about other people I did have an opportunity in my life to investigate a lot of this stuff. The only thing I remember people saying and repeating a few times is that it smelled like something very sweet. Something sweet. Now, mind you, this has nothing to do with Bob Lazar at all. This is completely other cases that I've worked on years ago. By the way, I once was the national director for MUFON for Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is going back. Yeah,
dude, I did not know that.
I was the youngest member of MUFON in the world back in 1988. Yeah. So I've been involved in this since 1987.
Your whole life.
Yeah. So a few people saying it smelled like something very sweet, and I've heard that a few times. But
you mean inside a craft during an abduction experience?
Inside the craft, inside the craft, yeah. There was one person who was inside the craft who smelled it, and her husband smelled it afterwards when they were outside the craft, and they smelled something very sweet. She says, this woman said it smelled like they were cooking candy or something,
Oh.
Yeah. So that, I mean, for whatever that's worth, because we don't know, what does that mean? I don't know.
The thing is too, with his story, the fact that he mentioned that, now David Grush is saying we got something like 12 to 15 crafts, but at the time Bob saw up to 9, I think, all different shapes. And the thing is, we're probably dealing with multitudes of species. This is not just one species making different shaped crafts, like, you know, different cars, different brands. These are different species. And, you know, there's different shapes. Even when you talk to, you know, say Travis Walton, he says he saw the grays, but after that, he saw humanoids. Right. So, yeah, it's very interesting that, you know, this phenomenon. I mean, I'm fascinated by the technology, always have been, but the entities are what drives me in this field. Yeah. They must be so, like, that's just, you know, that's just one part of their technology. Imagine what their home world is like. Imagine what their society's like. What technologies do they have that we couldn't even fathom?
Yeah, every time I think about, you know, all the people that I've met throughout my life, I've traveled to meet people who've had experiences and all that. It really gets weird when you start talking to people who actually saw beings.
Yeah.
Specifically the kids that were in Africa. I think that's one of the most important cases in modern times.
Yeah.
Because that was very credible case in Africa at aerial school. They saw what we consider to be grays, if you want to call it, but they were not gray. They were not, their skin color was not gray. It was more white and off-white than it was gray. Even Travis Walton, when he saw them, they were not gray. They were kind of a lighter color. So yeah, it certainly does seem like there's not just one type of these beings. What's really dangerous or scary is going down that path. As soon as you start getting into those conversations, it really stretches the limits of whoever we would like to have an open conversation about this topic. If we talk about flying saucers and a technology or a machine or something like that, something flying, something we caught on radar or on a FLIR pod or whatever, it's so acceptable. We could accept that, you know. But as soon as
it's at a distance, Luigi.
It not only is it even the craft with Bob, it's not even at a distance. It's right there, but it's just a machine. It's just some product. But as soon as you start interacting with some evolved being, and that evolved being doesn't look like us, it's scary. It really is. It becomes very controversial. It makes it very difficult for a lot of people to engage in a conversation. It makes it difficult for the person who saw it to want to talk about it because they don't want to be treated as crazy, which is, by the way, the reason why I founded We Are Not Alone. The reason why We Are Not Alone exists is because of my 10-year experience with some of the kids that were at aerial school that ruined their lives just going out there and saying, we saw two creatures walk up to us and communicate to us telepathically, and their lives got ruined. Everybody thought they were nuts. Everybody made fun of them. Some of them wanted to commit suicide. It was a terrible thing that happened, which we shouldn't, as a society, we should be very cautious on how we judge these situations because we have no idea what the hell they saw. But it does stretch our ability to accept and dive into the conversation. There's a difference between let's talk deep about a flying saucer versus what did the creature show you and what did it make you feel like? And, you know, that's a whole different category there.
Yeah. And like I said, even with the momentum that we got, acknowledging that we have visitors in the first place, that we have bodies of visitors. Let's just call them visitors because we don't know what they are. Tell them it might be occupants. We don't know. But just acknowledging that first and foremost, saying, look, we know that this is part of reality. And not only is a part of reality, but it's a daily reality. Like, it's not like these events happen every once in a while. It's daily across the world. People see something, record something. It could be in the most remote part of the world, and they're still going to be there. So we have to start talking about it more openly because it's kind of like, you know, we're all seeing the color pink, but nobody talks about it. Right. We all see it, but just pretend we don't talk about it, you know? And the fact is that it's going to take a while for the public to accept. First and foremost, we got stuff and entities here. but then to accept the fact that, the abduction phenomenon, which is very real, part of this phenomenon, cattle mutilations, which are somehow tied into this. I mean, it's so vast and life consuming. And it is life consuming because it affects every aspects of our lives. For Mr. Glawson over here, it includes philosophy, right? It includes our science, our way of thinking, our civilization. It changes everything. But because it's kept secret, or because we're being told not to talk about it, or we're not telling you anything about it, it's an insult. Us three, we've been looking into this for a while. We deserve to know at least a morsel, at least 15% more than I know now, God, at least 15% more before I die. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen in our lifetime, but honestly, I think being able to be open about this whole project is so cool, because it's a trilogy, but you'll get a full understanding of what Bob Lazar has been trying to say.
Right.
Yeah. And even when I read Dreamland, I loved it because he puts things in order, because usually people ask him things out of sequences and it's hard for you to try to figure out how it all works. So seeing what you guys did, the labor, the love, the work, and the fact that it's a Canadian project, man, I'm so pumped. It's cool. And this is much needed. And because we've been, the focus of the podcast is to study as in-depthly as we can this phenomenon. And you just gave us 3 freaking phenomenal things next year that we get to delve into, and just, Michael and the audience alike, just be able to binge. For those of us who are big Lazar fans, please come back on the podcast.
Sure,
we would love to have you back on. This is a fantastic project. I'm glad I got to meet you and that you agreed to come on. Yeah, absolutely.
It was great talking with you guys.
Yeah, we loved it. Great.
And Michael, do you have any final questions for our guest today?
Well, you've been involved in MUFON for a long time, and you've been involved in this phenomenon, researching it and having an active interest in it. My final question that I ask everybody is, what reading or viewing recommendations do you have for people who want to understand the phenomenon better? Things that you wish people would look at more, or pay more attention to, that they haven't?
It all depends on what part of the phenomenon you want to know more about. So if you want to know more about the nuts and bolts part of it, maybe you could read Leslie Kean's book,
UFOs, generals, and pilots and people.
That's more of a nuts and bolts book, something that is a good read. I think it's worth looking at. There's a lot of books also from Richard Dolan that I recommend that are very, very good.
Where would you start with Richard Dolan's work?
Pardon?
Where would you start? What's the first Richard Dolan book you'd push into somebody's hands?
I think After Disclosure is a good one, because it gives you a little bit of a social impact argument in there. So it gives you a little bit of understanding of what could happen to society, something like that. Put out in the public. If you don't want to talk about nuts and bolts, and you want to go into a little bit more of the, I don't call it fringe, I call it more of like the deeper stuff that's related, then definitely I recommend any books from John Mack or Bud Hopkins as a definite read. Any single one of them would be worth reading. There's also one that I take seriously, is from David Jacobs, The Threat. There's a book called The Threat from David Jacobs. It's that one there really pushes the envelope, but I have respect for David's work. I know David very well. He actually trained me for a year and a half personally on the abduction phenomenon. So I spent a lot of time with David. He's probably one of the last guys alive from the Bud Hopkins and John Mack era that really dove deep into it. When I was at his house in his basement, he had all of Bud Hopkins's work there, all the tapes, all the files, everything. When you start reading about all that, it takes you on a completely different path. So you have to be ready for a totally different perspective on the phenomenon. And
Bud Hopkins sort of veers into like not only Whitley Strieber, but like Ingo Swann sort of territory too,
Yeah.
like this telepathy and psychic phenomenon thing.
Right. And we have to be, and it's good to read a lot of different views on this. There's a woman who passed away. Her name was Carla Turner, Karla, Carla Turner. She also did a lot of research and work on abductions. Really interesting if you're interested in that. So you have nuts and bolts stuff, which is pretty easy to digest, actually. And then you have the deeper side of the darker side, if you want to call it this,
or esoteric, or maybe even occult side of things.
What I stay away from, wherever I warn everybody to be just very cautious about, is that anything that has to do with, like, when you hear about the secret space program or the Galactic Federation and all that, there's a lot of stuff there that is possible. I mean, there's a possibility out there. Would I support it? Not really right now. I'm very, 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 very skeptical of some of the things that are being put out there. It's kind of weird and scary from how many people get famous in talking about stuff like that, yet we have nothing to show for it. So it's kind of a...
Has Gaia really helped us? Yeah. Has that,
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible, because there's certainly certain things that do point in some of those directions. So I will be absolutely fair in saying, yeah, there's some stuff that makes sense, but we have to be very careful with the people that, say that they're part of a galactic federation and they're here to send a message and stuff. And I kind of warn everybody to, steer clear for that.
Yeah, agreed. Something smells kind of funny when we start getting
unless that level of speculation. Keanu Reeves or Ryan Reynolds. If they say it, then it's true. Okay, right. All right.
I believe anything Keanu said.
Yeah, exactly. Keanu's our leader. Oh man, Luigi, tell us where we could find you on the internet. I know you got the website, but I'll let you.
Yeah, it's Project Gravitaur with Gravitaur is Taur at the end, so projectgravitaur.com. That's where you get all our products or all our project. You could go on our Instagram, Project Gravitaur, follow us on our YouTube. It's under We Are Not Alone. It's wearenotalone.com is our parent of all this. So you could check out anything we do on those platforms. Stay tuned. There's more stuff coming specifically about Project Gravitaur. We released a teaser trailer recently with Bob driving a DeLorean, which was the coolest thing we've ever done, by the way. That was cool. And there's a lot of great stuff coming. So keep an eye out, because we have some of the best visuals you'll ever see coming out real soon.
Well, don't forget your friends here at this podcast. You're welcome here any day, my man. And awesome. We're strong supporters. Well, of what you guys are doing. I think this is great and about time. And the money's being spent. So that's what's great. It's not cheap. It's not a TikTok project by any means. So that's so freaking cool. And if ever Lazar starts doing interviews, tell him we'd love to have him on. I'd love to meet the guy for sure. We thank you so much, Luigi. You're awesome. It's a pleasure to meet you, and let's have you back on again.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Take care.
See you, Luigi.
Are you paying attention?